I just think maybe are Fine Gael a bit late to this now? Like you said, it's 4 weeks now, and at this stage, you know, people have said it a few times now. It's like Catherine Connolly, the way that any of these criticisms are being handled, like, you know, whether or not she is or is not answering the questions that are being put to her. She gives an answer, whether or not she gives the answer that people have been looking for in detail, you know, I think that remains to be seen. But I just think they've come to this quite late. We did see this, and, you know, I think the left have said they've kind of compared it to American style and, you know, advertising in terms of how, you know, the election process. So we saw Fine Gael putting that out over the weekend in relation to this particular story. But at this point, I think Catherine Connolly has proved to be somewhat Teflon. It's kind of bouncing off her at this stage. And I don't know if it's working, because what, you know, me looking at it, and I understand that Fine Gael are coming at it from a certain point of view and they feel like this is the tactic that they have to take. But it's also giving fodder to the left side. And they're saying, look what they're doing. The establishment are panicking. They're coming for Catherine Connolly. Look at this smear. And I think that's part of the issue now, is that it's actually galvanising Catherine Connolly's supporters, and saying, look what they're doing, look, they're running scared.
Yeah, but I mean, there is also a point here. I've seen a lot of press releases and little press statements from the parties that are supporting Catherine Connolly attacking Heather Humphreys.
True.
So that's legitimate criticism, but anything you say about Catherine Connolly is a smear. Is that basically what they're trying to tell us?
Yeah, but it's working though for their side, whether or not it's true or not. And you're right, like Sinn Féin, for example, Heather Humphreys has been very much putting it out there that I was the minister who oversaw the centenary of commemorations for the 1916 Rising and how successful it was. And, you know, part of her thing is unity and community and opportunity and bringing everybody together, and that was a great success. But then Sinn Féin, Angus Snuddick put out a press release saying that actually, no, that was a shambles, especially in the early days. For example, the official website, when it was in Irish, was gobbledygook and had to be taken down. There was a video that went up that didn't have anything got to do with 1916. It had Bono and the Queen. So they have, you're absolutely right, they have done that.
That's not a smear. That's legitimate criticism. I'm just kind of struggling to notice the difference. If you attack one candidate as legitimate criticism, attack the other candidate, it's a smear. To be fair to Catherine Connolly here, she was a barrister. Barristers represent criminals, because people, it's a fundamental part of our justice system. People are entitled to a defence. They are entitled to legal representation. Tricky one though for left-wing parties to basically be saying we're okay with our candidate representing banks in repossession cases. I've noticed statements out from Ivana Bacik, Holly Cairns, talking about how shocking, outrageous it is that Fine Gael are attacking her here in this manner, without once mentioning the banks of repossessions. That
was exactly the point that I was going to make. We aren't actually seeing them address the issue at hand here that she did. And like you said, Colette Fitzpatrick did get more of an answer out of her. I think it's fairly clear now she did represent banks. You know, we know that. And she has kind of said that, whether or not she said, I have represented banks in repossession cases. I think at this stage we know she's not going to say that. It'll turn into a soundbite and then off they go again. You know, I think at this stage we know.
But if it is too little too late and
exactly,
having any, your point is, doesn't really matter now at this stage. Yeah, John, she does have a significant lead in the poll. The Irish Times MRBI poll, which was the tail end of last week, was in an 18-point lead. Yeah. And even when they were crunching, and here's what happened, there's transfers and turnout and spoiled votes and blah, 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 it still looks like she's going to win this election comfortably.
Yeah, I think that is inevitable. I think this Fine Gael are quite right to, at very minimum, go down swinging.
It's a bit of raw meat for the old grassroots.
It is, yeah. It may well galvanise and inspire some of the activists who haven't been very active so far to get involved. All this talk of smears and new lows and all that. I mean, get off the stage, the whole lot. You're not behind the door and giving it out, so get on with it. It is an interesting sort of snooker, really, by Fine Gael, because it's a short walk from defending the independence of a barrister to actually defending banks repossessing homes in distressed mortgage situations. And there is a contrast to be made between Catherine Connolly's advocacy on housing and in favour of homeless people and acting for banks in dispossession cases. But the public will decide. I think it's an unlikely silver bullet, but it's an interesting proposition.
No, and in essence, I was listening to Helen McAtee, who was the former Minister of Justice, so she'd be familiar with this area. And she was basically saying, no, I don't have a problem with her doing the work, but she's saying there's a hypocrisy there.
Yes.
I mean, Catherine Connolly, interestingly enough, she was a member of the Galway Housing Action Group. They were staging protests, calling for a freeze on repossessions. They also started giving away tea and coffee at the Galway Repossession Court. You know, you're kind of going, how does that tally with you're part of a group? They're giving out teas and coffees to people who are losing their home.
You'd be inclined to ask.
You're inside in the court, acting on behalf of the banks.
You'd be inclined to ask, did the banks get a cup of tea out of that?
Okay, yeah. So as you say, look, it's a political tactic.
Yes. Yes, and
they are two separate. I mean, also Jim O'Callaghan, you have to point out, he's the Minister for Justice. He was a barrister.
Yeah.
Fine Gael. This is not a new tactic on their part.
It's not a new low.
Yeah, it's not a new low, actually.
It's an old low.
It's a repeat low. Because they went after Jim O'Callaghan 5 years ago saying he represented Jerry Adams, therefore he was soft on Sinn Féin. When in fact, Jim O'Callaghan said the same thing as the bar councillor, saying, no, I'm a barrister. I represent people.
And this was always going to happen, like exactly what John was saying. I mean, especially in the last week of the campaign, that we weren't going to see one or both sides coming out and poking holes in the candidate. That is inevitable. It's an election. That's what we're going to see. You know, we see that during the general election. We're going to see it especially during a presidential election.
Especially during a presidential election.
When it's an individual.
The president has two minor, discrete functions, each of which is rarely used. It becomes a character contest. Character is assessed by past actions and how people behaved. And it's a sort of trying to throw up, well, just imagine the president is close to a political crisis in Ireland. How will he or she behave and react? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.